All right. Looks like everything is all 5x5, ship shape in Bristol fashion. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. How
Oh, okay. We got a little glitch there, but let's see how that plays out. How have you been since the last time we've seen you here?
I've been busy with a few personal projects I've been doing and trying to find out exactly what's going on out there in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, it's a little all over the place as well. I've been alarmingly busy since the last show, working on some screenplays or commercial scripts or scripts for commercials for one of the media companies I'm contracted with. So that's been kind of crazy, but I'm happy to have you here tonight because we got an interesting script. Let's see here. Looks like everything is all nice and clear on from the chat. So, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs, discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week, once again, is the Wicked Fanboy, also known as Jim. So glad to have you back, sir. From one writer to another, I think we've got an interesting show lined up for all the listeners today.
Definitely, for sure, always a pleasure to be on the show. And yeah, this is definitely an interesting script to talk about for sure. Definitely.
Yes, so this script placed 44th on last year's blacklist with 12 votes. It is titled Mommy's Home, and it's written by James Morosini. Jim, share with the audience the logline for Mommy's Home.
All right, then. A young dad revives his 24-year-old cryogenically frozen mom, unleashing terror and forbidden tension that haunt his family and threaten to unravel his marriage. Ooh.
Ooh, yes, indeed. In fact, synopsis for this is Jack, a man haunted by his mother's cryogenic preservation, seeks to reunite with her after groundbreaking revival technology emerges. He yearns for the family he lost, but her return unravels chaos, her mind warped, mistaking him for his father and his son for him. As violence erupts and secrets unravel, Jack faces a heart-wrenching choice: save his family or cling to his mother's fractured love. Will he risk everything again? So yeah, this is a very peculiar type of concept. It also puts in an interesting dynamic where you have a mother significantly younger than her son, and it reminds me a little bit of that sci-fi movie from like over a decade ago with Justin Timberlake, and where there's like his mom was played by a young actress, and you had time that you could always be youthful or you could get older or what have you. I think it was inspired by the Harlan Ellison story, Why Harlequin Said the TikTok Man, or I might be butchering that title, but that's what came into my mind at first with this premise. And then you've also got the Mel Gibson cryogenically frozen movie as well coming into that here. So we have a very interesting dynamic. What were your thoughts from just like the log line and then the first little bit of what you read for the script?
Logline intrigued me. Obviously, it's definitely a you can only imagine how old this gentleman would be at this point now, reviving his 24-year-old mother that could come in and just completely unravel his family aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the first, going into the first 10 pages of the script, which is what's supposed to grab the reader in the first place. It started out sweetly. I mean, you have your main character, Hope, and
Mm-hmm.
then her son, Jack. And slowly, as it starts to unravel, get to feel what the relationship is between them, obviously loving. And we come to find out that Hope is ill, and something is going on there. So that kind of intrigued me, and that was the thing that actually grabbed me. I didn't know that it was going to go off, in other different directions, but I'm kind of glad it did. And boy, did it keep my attention.
Yeah, I mean, I was really hooked in with that with the first few pages because we get this type of VHS recording of this new technology where you can be cryogenically frozen, and for whatever reason, is mostly geared towards people with like terminal illnesses, where they can be revived later when there's a cure, which is the classic advertisement gimmick that occurred in real life, actually, in like the 70s and 80s. Fortunately,
Right.
it never real, as far as I know, no one's really actually volunteered or signed up for such a process. And if they have, it hasn't hit the news in my area. And then we find out that Hope, yeah, she's an exotic dancer. She had Jack when she was 19, and he's 5 when we first meet him, and he's this like adorable little kid. Really loves his mom, and his mom clearly like is doing everything she can for her son. And they have this heart to heart where she reads him the story of Sleeping Beauty, and doing this to kind of prime him for the fact that she's going to be going under and probably won't see her son for a while, if not ever. She has no clue. Nobody does. And it's only because she's sick, because we see that she's like coughing pretty violently, and then she's able to recover herself, and then, obfuscate the concern her son has by saying, oh, it's just something, a tickle in my throat. And then we get something that's kind of like a part of this reminded me a little bit of like trying to pull the same heartstrings that James Gunn did with Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, where, mom's in the hospital, she's dying of cancer, grandpa's there, the little kid's there, and it's it's a very heart-wrenching thing. And we get something similar to that, where grandpa has driven, his daughter Hope and grandson Mike to this cryogenic facility. She says her goodbyes. Jack is about to go graduate kindergarten and go into the first grade, and he's supposed to get like a first grade buddy to help him transition into the that type of school format. And he's not registering that his mom's going to be going away for a while. And when he finally does, he runs in to see her put into the tube, and then the freezing process goes. And then we cut to him, 35 years old, waking up from a dream. And next to him is his wife, who's a couple years older, but she is very similar looking to his mother, Hope. And he's got a normal life. He's got a 5-year-old kid that's a dead ringer for him when he was that age. And he kind of doesn't like his job as an ad account executive, because he has all this pressure about landing this account. And his motivations are, if he gets this huge account, that's his kid's college. His future in education is pretty much set. His wife, Brooke, is a psychologist. So, they've got two double income family, decently lucrative, but not nowhere near as comfortable as last week's family. But they're there.
Correct.
And as Jack is kind of getting prepped for this stuff, he hears of a breakthrough with regards to like the cryogenic freezing, where the company that's got his mom on ice has utilized new technology that can allow these people to be revived safely. And it's quite expensive. It's like $50,000. And Jack is excited because he wants to see his mom again. He hasn't seen her in 30 years. And we find out from Jack and Brooke that Everett's kind of a handful with their busy lives, and they need a little bit of help. And Brooke doesn't really want to ask her mom to do it, and they don't know if it's in the budget to hire a babysitter or a nanny. So they're in a little bit of a bind. But Jack thinks this might be an kismet of sorts, a good omen that this new technology can revive his mom, and he can bring her back into the family, and maybe she can help out as they acclimate her to the 21st century. So that's the whole type of premise there. I thought it was pretty decently set up, and effectively so. What were your thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, definitely. It was very, very well set up. It builds it. I mean, you can feel the tension. I mean, just reading it, and from the stage direction in the script, he did a beautiful job working on the script. He did a very, very nice job, and he set it up beautifully. And I don't know how far you want to go into spoilers or not.
Well, within the first act of the second act, we can spoil a little bit here and there. Just get the major points. We just don't want to spoil the ending, because that's usually where your twists and turns or revelations kind of come in, and we kind of want to encourage your listeners to, if our conversation piques their curiosity regarding the script, we don't want to rob them of that revelation.
Exactly. Yeah, the point where they wake her up, though, that was very, very intriguing. That was interesting. I mean, it's kind of shocking at the same time as being, what's the word I'm looking for? Sweet in nature, but also had kind of a weird tinge about it
It did, because
at the same time.
it didn't feel like it was a medical thing so much as it was pushing some boundaries here. Because they all go down
Exactly.
to the facility. There's a Dr. Chen who's basically the proxy here, who's coordinating with Mark, and he's saying like, "Yep, so yeah, we're going to do the revival process. There is going to be some acclimation period, but everything should be okay." When Jack asks about the cancer, Dr. Chen says, "Well, we were able to actually neutralize that over many years because her body was preserved. We were able to target and kill the cancer with like radiation and chemotherapy." And it's a very clever way. And I thought, okay, that's cool. So that problem's done. She's not doesn't have cancer when she's revived. But Mark is really insistent about being present for the revival. And the doctors are like, well, you don't really have to be present, but he's just so much misses his mom that he wants to like be there and be the first person that she sees. So he's in a hazmat suit. They're all there. They're kind of like behind this glass barrier, and there's another team that's there. They're injecting all of these like nanobots to kind of revive her cells and then slowly heat her up. But the thing is that it's not like she's in a cryo suit. She is stark naked. So this is a 24-year-old woman who is an exotic dancer who has a kid who her 35-year-old son is seeing his mother naked in this context, and it's really awkward and uncomfortable. And they're massaging her extremities to try and get the blood flow going as they've stimulated her heart. And it's not detailedly described, but it's definitely implied that it gets a little bit beyond what most medical technicians should be doing to kind of, get the blood flowing. Um, so yeah, I thought, okay, this is kind of like your first seed of the fact that this is going to go in a really weird direction. At least that's what I got from it.
Yeah, yeah, weird and uncomfortable at times, but that's okay. Weird and uncomfortable is good.
Well, I mean, it does put the audience on edge, and the other part too is that Mark responds to it as weird and uncomfortable. So we realize that he's got kind of a moral compass still, and here in his infatuation with his mother is more so that absence makes a heart grow fonder as opposed to anything more suggestive. But once she's revived, she has this kind of like spasm where she like freaks out and she's almost seizuring on the table. But they hold her down and then she's normal, and then her eyes open up and she's fine. And then we kind of cut to a few minutes later where the doctors put her in her gown and she's kind of like she's sitting upright and she's getting a general checkup. And then Jack comes in, and Hope sees Jack and thinks that it's Jack's father, and is kind of hard to figure out or believe that this is her 35-year-old son. But it raised a question to me, which is, why had none of the doctors that have revived her and that are getting her like situated say, hey, it's been 30 years? Like, just tell you it's been 30 years. Like, that apparently did not come up in any conversation with Hope, who's like, oh, did it work? Like, because that's probably something that'd be on the tip of her tongue. Is like, I know I went in, and now I'm here. What happened? What's going on? Like,
Sure. Yeah,
tell them.
correct. Like to her, it's the next day. Yeah, she doesn't know the difference between then and now. And yeah, that could be a very, very striking contrast for that particular individual if that were to happen. And yeah, it creates an odd situation between son and mother in that particular situation, even for the doctors that are there. And you're right; they should have actually tried to slowly orient her, bring her up to date as to what's going on, where she is, and what happened. Because technically for her, it's just the next day. She doesn't know the difference between the span of years that have occurred, obviously, and the gentleman that's standing in front of her, looking at her lovingly, wondering, whether or not she's going to remember him.
Exactly. But she like clocks him as a dead ringer for her father. I think she even calls him Phil. And
Yeah.
Jack is like, no, I'm your kid, Mom. I'm Jack. And she has a difficult time believing this until finally She kind of gets to it. So they get her into clothes. She meets Brooke, who she's not very trustful of, and then she sees Everett, which is Jack and Brooke's 5-year-old son, who Hope remarks looks identical to Jack did. And she even has a couple of moments where she calls Everett Jack instead of his name, and Everett corrects her. And then she goes outside and sees the brand new world, and it's very different to what she saw in like the mid '90s. The cars are different. She sees Jack's iPhone, and when he says it's an iPhone, she's like, "What do you mean a U phone?" Like, and they're like, "Good, plenty stuff." So we got this nice dynamic of a fish out of water character. What did you think about her reactions to like technology and how the writer kind of addressed her point of view for that?
It was very interesting. I mean, you didn't have to do too much, actually. It's just a simple bit of dialogue, her expression toward things, acknowledging the cell phone, the iPhone, actually. Simple things, what is that? What does it do? What are you supposed to do with it? I think at one point he actually hands the phone to her,
Yeah,
I
let's
believe.
her kind of.
And she scrolls down, yeah, to check it out. She goes, how does this work exactly? What do I do with it? So she's inquisitive, at least. And
Oh
she is
yeah.
interested in seeing it.
And what's funny
Yeah,
is
but it's
that
also a shock.
it's a huge shock, but she also talks about like it's magic, and he's like, I guess so, because I don't know how it works, because like she's touching the screen and it's responding to her. I mean, this should blow anyone away, just as when we saw the first smartphone, we were amazed by it. We had a bit more of a gradual integration of such technology compared to the 180-degree turnaround here, but yeah, we ended up we get this kind of she's playing catch up now, so they're at the kitchen home, but they also meet Brooke's parents, who are in their 70s. And what's funny is that Everett remarks how the new grandma is prettier. and of course Hope really likes this, but she's also kind of trying to play nice with her now brand new in-laws and daughter-in-law and everything. And she's still not, we could tell, like the way that the script kind of describes her and the scene headings and action lines, is that she is still very much uncomfortable around everybody, even Jack, who she's bothered that he calls her mom and not mommy, because those mommy years are long gone. And she's and then she gives Brooke kind of like the third degree in the most passive aggressive way imaginable. Do you want to take the lead on that one? Because I think it was a pretty decent little bit there, and you talked about the dynamic of the relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And specifically with Everett and her son Jack. And it's I won't go too deep into it, but it was very, very gently done. There were some jabs taken, some very little slight ones. But that the actual dynamic of the situation and the fact that all the characters, everybody was uncomfortable. There was not one person that was comfortable during that entire situation. Just kind of made it interesting. You could just, by reading the stage direction, you could see the body, or you could feel the body language.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't take too much dialogue to be able to express what was going on there. So you could see that she's kind of sizing everybody up, specifically Brooke. And the fact that Brooke can tell that she's sizing her up every time she looks at her. They're always constantly giving each other the side eye here and there and about. And Jack is still kind of confused about the situation. He's trying to figure out exactly what's going on here, even though mom is here. Great, It's just an odd situation, but you can just kind of feel the tension between everybody there.
Yeah, and you can feel the fact that Jack had no clue what he was expecting with her return.
Right.
He was also still processing the fact that this is a miracle from his point of view. It's like he lost his mother when he was 5, and now she's back. And the one thing he didn't expect is that Hope was far more interested in picking up where she left off. And we find out that Jack even though he was raised by his grandfather for a spell, we find out his grandfather didn't really do a good job helping him kind of cope and get over the loss of his mother because, his grandfather died when he was 17, and Jack ended up going to a psychologist, and that psychologist was Brooke. And
Exactly.
that is really unethical.
Yeah, it is unethical. It's interesting, and as they described it in the script and in a little bit of dialogue when they were sitting at the table with Hope there, and when everybody's sitting down, is that it took them 2 years before he actually asked her out on a date, although it was kind of brewing.
Well, that's what they say publicly, but we get the implication that wasn't actually the case. Is that at some point
Right.
she violated doctor-patient ethics, and they started dating while he was still a patient, and I guess she phased him out on the patient side of things to kind of keep it above board, and they ended up getting married and having a kid. But it also shows, there's some depth to this dynamic. It shows how Jack really wasn't given the proper nurturing needed in order to get, enter into adulthood properly, and that Brooke saw a very loyal, dependable, easily manipulatable man who she also happened to find attractive enough to say, this is the type of guy I can rely on and not get fooled, not get messed around with.
Right.
And then the moment that the mom returns, she's got jealousy. It's not through like any type of sexual thing or anything of that nature. It's attention. It's primarily with attention, because as far as we know, Jack has no friends. Like, he's not interacting with anyone else other than his wife and his kid. And even the guys that he works with, they're just work colleagues. They're not anyone that he hangs out with afterwards. So he's a very isolated character.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the points that I was looking at in the script is that Jack doesn't have any buddies outside of work, outside of Mike and dealing with all of his other coworkers there. The only ones that he does interact with is with his wife and his son and his mother-in-law and father-in-law, obviously, and that's about it. Now, I would have liked to have seen, a couple of buddies or, maybe a bar visit or a stop at a restaurant or something like that with a couple of buddies discussing things, whatever, daily routine.
Yeah.
Anything like that. But, that's okay. But it's kind of a void. There's something that's missing, but you could tell that the family dynamic was more important to James here, our screenwriter, than bringing in any more characters into the story. I didn't think maybe he didn't think he needed any more in there or anybody else for him to bounce off of, more or less.
Yeah, because we never see Jack interact outside of his family or outside of his job. So we don't really get a sense of who he is fully. Like, if we got to see his friends before his mother survived and we got to see the relationship and the dynamic and understand the status between those characters, and then all of a sudden when the mom's revived and then you have the young mother coming in to meet his friends, obviously the friends are going to be shocked and confused, and some of them a little bit intrigued because you've got their buddy's mom, who is very, very attractive and also younger than all of them. And it goes into the trope that you've seen in movies that have also popped up for a lot of young men through high school and college, where they have their one friend who's got a very attractive mom, and so they make fun of their friend by teasing how much they like his mom. And 90% of the time, that's all just jokes, and there's no ever intention behind it. But we have a script here where you could definitely drive into the fact that there could be something of an intention behind it. But we don't get that opportunity because the writer does focus primarily on Mark and his dynamic with his wife and kid versus his dynamic with his mom. And then Hope, who, is having a difficult time reconciling that her son's an adult and older than her. But we do get this interesting thing, we get a group session of other revived with their family members. And we see that, some people are so happy and shocked and of the changes of the world. There's a comment about how, a lot of technology has changed, but the fashion kind of hasn't, which is weird.
Right.
And then we get this one character who's just known as the revived father. and
Uh-huh.
and he manages to talk to Hope like in private while they're getting coffee and stuff, and while Jack is talking to Dr. Chen, who is running this meeting, and the revived father says that this is all a psyop. Like, we're not really in the future. That this is all the government staging this whole world around us, so that as an experiment to see how we would acclimate to a sudden time jump of decades. And Hope doesn't really believe it at first, but then when she starts looking at Jack, and she starts getting flashbacks of Jack's father, she's starting to like put things together and maybe entertain the idea that maybe this is the case. And at the same time this is happening, Brooke has been researching the revival process, and she comes across a couple of instances where some of the revived have started behaving with varying characteristics. Like the prefrontal cortex is not fully like thawed out of sorts, and they're prone to like quick violence or quick sexual actions or delusions. And Brooke is like frantically texting Jack about this and saying like, if you're still with Dr. Chen, ask him about this. And she starts sending him articles, and Jack does peruse them really quickly, and he does say, hey, Dr. Chen, like, what's going on with this? And he's saying, oh yeah, other cryogenic facilities were taking shortcuts to lower costs in order to do the revival process, but we didn't do any of that. So you should be fine. But and then he does say like, well, if you notice anything, let me know. But rest assured, we're very confident that your mother is in good health, as with the rest of the patients here at this group. So we have this new lingering thing where, can we trust Hope is fully Hope at this point? So, and then that takes us into Everett's 5th birthday party. So I guess I'll throw it to you, because that goes more into the family dynamic. How did you like how Hope interacted and presented herself at this party versus Brooke and then the grandparents and all the kids splashing around at the pool?
It definitely got weird at that point, getting into the birthday party there. It's just from the previous scene that you're talking about, the of the father, the gentleman that was speaking to her in private, and her thinking that, well, maybe, okay, her son is her son's father and so on, and Everett is her kid, and all actuality being that her memories are clouded and things are going on up there that just making her completely confused, and she doesn't know exactly how to take everything. And it starts getting a little risque. And
yeah, Hope comes out in a bikini to her grandson's 5th birthday party. Granted, you have to remember, she's 24 years old.
right.
All the other women there have the one-piece swimsuits, more conservative. And we get this very awkward scene where Brooke is, applying sunscreen to Everett to protect him, and then Hope is doing the same thing to Jack, but she's like spending a lot of time rubbing that sunscreen into him.
Right. Yeah, vigorously, and we can get to a certain point.
Well, I mean, it makes him uncomfortable. It makes Brooke uncomfortable. Yeah. There is this one thing which I thought was kind of weird and a little bit, it made me raise an eyebrow with Brooke as well as it did with Jack, and that is when when the application of the sunscreen is done and Everett goes running into the water, and Jack gets up. Jack is adjusting his swimwear because it's some things have been triggered, and Brooke notices this, and instead of just making a general inquiry, she like puts her hand right into his pants and feels around there. Now, this one also made me laugh a little bit, because it's like, well, Jack's not very good on the wit, because if she were to question anything while she's got him in his hand, I would say, well, your hand's there. That's one of the main reasons why I might be reacting this way, and I don't think it's very appropriate in front of our son's friends. And and I like the fact that the writer kind of did this because it does give you an open aspect of, yeah, Jack's uncomfortable. He's adjusting himself afterwards because, you know, he got essentially a sensual massage and from his mom, and his body's confused and his mind is terrified. And then his wife then now escalates it by essentially getting to third base or second base with him in public. And it's really, and the thing is that Hope's not, she's doing stuff that she would do for a 5-year-old to a 35-year-old. And because the loving nature, it's really like getting right up to that edge of being inappropriate, right? Because, you know, a mom she'll like spit on a napkin and then rub it all over your face to clean you up, and then maybe like pat your bottom when you're going off to play with your kids or what have you. To do that as a 24-year-old to a 35-year-old man that also happens to be your son, definitely going to raise a lot more confusion on the older son than on the other part. I mean, so it's really, and then in the pool, Brooke kind of starts calling out Hope's weird behavior, and Hope is trying to play with Brooke by like splashing her, and Brooke doesn't really like that, and all of a sudden Hope then kind of gets on top of Brooke and then plunges her under the water and holds her there for a good moment until Jack and Everett kind of call for Hope to come on over. And that's where Brooke kind of freaks out and like swears at her. And we get into this whole little thing where like stress and tensions are really kind of escalating right here. And Hope is just trying to play it innocent. Like, I was just having fun. And we do see that contrast is that Hope is a loving but also very fun mom. She's a young mom. She's an under 30 mom. So she's still got the energy of the 20s and the mentality and life experience of someone in their early 20s, compared to Brooke, who had children in her early 30s, had established a career, had understood responsibilities, made it a little bit further on the maturity scale compared to her. And then the other part too is everybody's looking at the revived grandma that's only 24, and nobody is paying attention to the kids. Nobody's paying attention to the other people. It's just all eyes are on her. So you've got this level of attention on Hope that she would normally only really see, or really would have seen, at work as an exotic dancer. So now it's getting into her normal life.
Right. And just the actions of the fact that she basically almost drowned her in the pool. That sets off all of her suspicions. Brooke's suspicions from seeing all the news reports and all the issues that have been coming up from the revived in recent, and it hits home, and she is completely suspicious of Hope from then on.
Very much so, and she's trying to keep an eye on it. But what's kind of weird is that you have this one scene where after the party, Hope has gone to bed. Everett's been tucked in. Jack and Brooke kind of are in the bathroom. They're getting ready for the night, but then they all of a sudden just start making out, and then they're having sex in the bathroom, and the mirrors are fogging up, and then part of Hope's back of her head kind of clears off a section of the mirror, and in the reflection we see, Brooke's head clears off a reflection of the mirror, and then in the reflection we see Hope watching them, and I'm like, that is really creepy, because Jack and Brooke have no awareness that she's there, and it's really messed up. and this is like the first real big creepy thing that she does, because the next one happens, and I think this one's felt a little convoluted, but I don't know. Let me get your opinion on this, Jim. But Jack ends up having like a bath, like just sitting in the tub, and it's really weird. And then Hope comes in, and she's still wearing like the bikini, and she's like, "Hey, let me wash your hair." and Jack is like, "No, you can't do that." And she's like, "Well, come on, like I haven't done it in years, and you've grown up so fast, and I'm just trying to get used to this stuff." And he reluctantly is like, "Okay." And instead of her just doing it from outside the tub, she ends up like getting into the tub with him behind him, so his back is to her front, and so yeah, she's like pouring water on his head and she's massaging it in there, and Jack is very uncomfortable, but he's remembering what Dr. Chen said, which is, hey, let's, we have to acclimate them into this current time. They have to get used to things, so there might be some awkwardness, what have you. And then something straight out of a really twisted blue movie happens where Hope has removed her swimsuit and tossed it onto the bathroom floor. And Jack is freaking out because he's just like, nope, we're not doing this. This is not right. And Brooke knocks on the bathroom door. So you're like, holy cow, there's going to be, how is Jack going to explain this? But he immediately hops out of the tub, draws the curtain, tells Hope to not say anything. And goes to Brooke. And he basically is like, yeah, let's talk in the bedroom. Let's not talk in here. Let's just get out of here. And it's so, like, the tension is messed up because it's everything. Like, Jack is like, oh, I miss my mom. I don't miss whatever this woman is. And
right.
And what's going through with Hope is that she is pushing boundaries, and we don't know if it's like the degeneration process of the revival or if she is trying to test Jack to see if he's really Phil. Like, and that this is all an illusion.
Right.
So, and that's the setup. And I'm like, this is, that's a very ballsy thing to put on paper there. So, like, how did you find that type of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely ballsy. That one thing for sure. It goes in obviously other directions as well as we continue with the script. It, definitely inappropriate. Definitely would make individuals, if something like this were to actually take place, it would definitely make things uncomfortable for the viewer or the reader. For the characters, within in the film, okay, well, they're just characters. But for the person who's reading it, or if you were to go to the movies, say this thing actually got produced and actually put into theaters, it would make you cringe a little bit. I mean, it would definitely make you uncomfortable.
I mean, it's designed to do that too. I mean, that's the other part I have to take notice, is that it's not designed to try and convince the audience that this is right. It's trying to tell you, like, yeah, this is wrong. Like, you should feel uncomfortable. We are not promoting this type of behavior here. So I want to couch that in there. Like, this is not some type of weird thing you'd find on an adult website. This is the writer pushing boundaries to show you that, there's something very, very wrong with this revival process.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely is. In big ways. Yeah, definitely. That was the first point. That was the first thing that actually made me feel uncomfortable. Actually, just sitting there reading it, I was laughing at it, but it was an uneasy, uncomfortable laugh when I was chuckling, and I'm like, really? He went this far with this? Oh, okay. Let's see how far the script gets.
I mean, it follows like a very important rule, which is never make anything easy for your main character, and that is not like it's easy to say no when someone is trying to be intimate with you. When you add in the fact that it's your mother, yeah, you can say no, but also it could be it's just, there's cross interpretations. It's like, first of all, why the heck are you doing this? From son to mother. And then the second part is like, I know I'm your kid, and I know you want to recapture those old times, but we're both now adults. You can't, it's no longer cute for the mom and kid to bathe together in order to like help the kid get used to, not fearing water, knowing how to clean themselves, all that type of stuff. There are certain boundaries that can't be crossed. That, I mean, I know some mothers that stopped, sharing their, especially like with my godchildren, they stopped sharing the bath once their kids were 3, because it's like at that point they could actually sit up on their own. They didn't have to be totally monitored all the time. And then it was just like wash your hair and then instruct them to do all the rest. But beforehand, when they're kids, yeah, like that's what they did. I was always of the one suggesting, like, why don't you just wear like your bathing suit when you're getting into the bath? And all my mother friends that were saying like, well, I'm getting clean at the same time. It's like, okay, weird for me, but okay, if that's what you want to do it. I don't like, it's odd. And then in here in this
Right.
situation, it's like, yeah, we know it's odd, and it's especially odd when, it's a 24-year-old mom with her 35-year-old son. So it's peculiar, and the other part too is that no point does Jack or anyone around Jack's family try to imply that Jack isn't Jack.
Exact. Correct. Yeah.
So it's very it's very weird, and it only gets weirder because the following morning, Hope is making breakfast for the family, which is nice, and the kitchen is immaculately clean, and Brooke's kind of getting a little jealous because the territory that she's occupied has now been revamped and a little bit better than what she could maintain it. But Hope is also wearing a very revealing nightgown while she's making breakfast.
Yeah.
And
Making pancakes and then yeah.
and Everett, of course, doesn't even clock this because he's not of an age to even recognize that. But Brooke and
Right.
Jack do, and they're both thinking that is not appropriate there at all. And all of this is happening while
Right.
Jack is having to like get used to, getting ready for his pitch because he's on a Zoom call in his office, and then his mom comes in wearing only a towel, and she's talking about how like she needs to find some clothes or what have you, and she's right in the background of the Zoom call, and the guys on the Zoom call are like, "Who is that? What's going on?" And she's like, "Well, what?" And Hope is like, "Well, what? Are you watching TV? Like, what is this?" And she's like leaning in, and Jack is trying to get her. It's like, "This is a call. Please go, go downstairs. Get out of here." And she gets a little offended by the rudeness from it, but I mean, it's she is completely devoid of the context of what is actually happening here because his boss, one of his coworkers, and the client are all very infatuated with this beautiful 24-year-old woman who is wearing nothing but a towel, and who Jack has said at the last moment, "Oh, that's my cousin, not my mom," and so now that is a new lie that's kind of floating out in the air. And while this is all happening, Brooke is finding more reports of violent outbursts from some of the revived. So like we've just covered like the first act and the first half of the second act. Jim, share with the audience some of the points you picked up with regards to structure and character, and some of the things that kind of really piqued your interest with the weirdness and the uncomfortability part. Oh, I think you're muted by accident. Let me double check. Because we can't. Yeah, you're not muted on the Discord.
No.
Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you. Sorry about that, sir. Okay.
You need to. More and more creepier things start to happen, as obviously just from that Zoom call that he had with the client and his boss and people at the office there. It starts getting a little bit more and more creepier as Hope starts to become more and more attached to their son. And the family dynamic starts to get even stranger and stranger as it goes from there. Especially with the boy. I'm more jealous of that and more suspicious of Hope. And Jack is, I mean, he's completely aware of what's going on here and the mischievous person that his mom is, obviously. But he's trying to look past that to say, okay, maybe we can still make things work, even though things have been getting here weird lately. As far as the end of the second act there, I mean, the family dynamic, you see things start to deteriorate slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly until we start creeping into the third act of the script.
Yeah, and once we start getting towards that third act, that's where Jack starts realizing that the loving mother that he had was an honest role, but it was something that occupied her time when he was a child and around. Now that he's an adult, it's not so much
Sure.
there. Her actual personality, where she's a bit more mischievous, and then also sharing the story about Jack's father to him and Brooke, because Jack didn't know the
Right.
situation. And that's where Jack kind of realizes that, yep, his mom was an exotic dancer. One of the clients that
Mhm.
patroned her club ended up really liking her, and they hit it off, and they went on many dates, and then she got
Mhm.
pregnant, and
Correct.
he promised to be there for the child, but then she never saw him again, and we have no
Yeah.
clue why that is the case. We don't know if he ran off. We don't know if maybe he was murdered and his body was missing, and because all she knew is like his first name, didn't know his last name or anything of that nature. So we have this huge mystery as to
Right.
what happened to Jack's father, and it also gets leaned into a little bit that with Hope suspecting that Jack is the father and that Everett is her son, and Brooke is just the new
Correct.
wife that, or the wife that was, probably hidden in the background when she was with the Jack's father, that he returned to, and then he came back just to pick up his kid from her, since she was you know under the ice. And so this really does bother Brooke a lot, because it freaks her out, and Jack and Brooke get into a huge fight where she kicks Jack out, and she says, "You're leaving now. You're getting out.
Right.
We'll talk later, but for now, you're not doing this. Go get a hotel, whatever."
Right.
Jack takes his mom. They go get a hotel. Jack's sleeping in the bed. His mom's supposed to be on the pull-out couch,
Mhm.
but she's trying to nestle in and snuggle with him
Right.
in bed, and he's like, "No, please don't do this. I have an important meeting tomorrow. I can't be late for it." And so, it's an awkward tension. He falls asleep, and when he wakes up, it's from his phone. Who There's all these alerts coming through, says, "Hey, you got to get to this club within the next 45 minutes because this is when the deal is going down." And Jack pretty much bolts up, and he starts getting ready, and he tells Hope, "Don't leave this place. I have to go to this Rhino club for my meeting. I'll be back in an hour." And boom, that's what he does. So he's at this club, and it's a strip club, and it's a dance floor, and it's your cliche, misogynistic, client and advertising agency party where, lots of drinks and what have you. And as things
Mhm.
are close, as Jack is able to like close the deal, or getting close to closing the deal, Hope shows up in a very evocative outfit, kind of like I think it's like a yellow, like tight dress with a couple of straps on it or something, as it's described. And she makes a beeline for Jack, and all the other guys at the table are really enamored with her. And then she makes no qualms about introducing herself as Jack's mom. And then that's when the guys are like, "Oh, you're one of the revived." And then they start making jokes about how she's going to snap or what have you. And of course,
Mhm.
Hope is saying, "Oh, that's not going to happen. Let me sit down and join you guys." And of course, there's not any extra seats. And what does Hope do? Well, she sits on the lap of the client that Jack has to win over for the account. And she basically kind of implies
Right.
to Jax, like, "I'm going to make sure my son gets this account." And you're like, "Oh, this is not what you want to see your mother doing ever at all."
Right, exactly. And the fact that something like this would take place in essentially a nudie bar. Um, okay,
Which
for story's sake, yeah.
which
Right.
Hope
Right.
reveals is this is
Yeah.
the place she used to work before she went under. So that's why she
Right.
knew it, and that's why she's there. So it's just every bad thing you
Mhm.
could possibly have Jack experience right now is happening in this moment, which is a little bit funny.
Times 10.
Yeah, times 10, definitely. Uh, so why don't you share with us a little bit of the events that happen at this club, and also what Brooke is learning while Jack is trying to close this deal.
What Brooke is learning slowly is that a lot of the revived are going off into violent tangents. They're dipping in and out of reality, so to speak, and causing havoc pretty much everywhere. And well, there's a recall on the revived, technically. by all of the cryogenic labs that held them in the first place. Meanwhile, Hope is grinding on the lap of Mr. Eskern, the client, obviously getting him stimulated. Well, Jack is just sitting there going, "Oh, Jesus, what the hell's going on now? No, please don't let this happen." And his buddy Mike and coworker Mike is sitting there enjoying himself, obviously. Everybody's all liquored up. I think Jack, no, Jack didn't actually start tipping in until a little bit later. But
Right.
anyway, he's witnessing this stuff, and his mother is actually demasculating him there right in front of these guys, especially with Esker. And right from there, it gets really off the rails.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Jack is getting a bunch of phone calls from Brooke, who's freaking out, saying, "Where are you? Where's Hope? You've got to get away from her." Some of the people of the revived have killed their family members and taken their kids. The National Guard has been called in to kind of like round these people up, which is kind of extreme. And while Jack is on the phone trying to like listen to this and among the loud noise, Hope takes Eskrin to the ladies' room or the men's room. I think it's the men's room.
The men's room.
And when Jack returns to the table and tries to find out what's going on, he figures out that what his mom has done, and so he bursts into the men's room. He finds Eskrin and his mother sharing a stall. Eskrin then starts to beat the crap out of Jack for interrupting his coitus. And
Right.
while he's like stomping on his chest and neck, Hope's maternal instincts take over. She grabs the top of the toilet tank lid and cracks it over the back of Eskrin's head, and then proceeds to beat him to death in the men's room for attacking her son. And then even as this is happening, and Jack is trying to get out of there, she is just kind of losing it. She ends up escaping Jack for a moment, jumps up on stage, starts to do a little bit of a performance. Some of the patrons there reach for her, and she ends up grabbing like a beer bottle and then cracking it over one guy's head where it breaks, and then stabbing another guy with the sharded glass.
Right.
And it's a pandemonium there. Jack manages to get his bearings. He finally like drags Hope out of there and gets her into a car and starts driving. And Hope starts making accusations that Jack is not Jack, that Jack is the father, that Phil.
Right.
And she's saying like, the reason I was, started with that guy is to get you jealous because I wanted to see how you responded. And I know like Everett's really my son and you're his father, and Brooke's just your side piece, and she's never going to love you as much as I do. It's all this stuff. And Jack is completely like lost and freaking out, and he's trying to tell her like, no, that's not the case. He ends up, back at his place, gets out of the car, tells Hope to stay there. He goes to see Brooke and see what's going on. They have a fight. And while they're fighting, Hope sneaks into the house, cuddles up next to Everett, and says that, Mommy's here and we're going to get you back home. And this is where we cut off with the spoilers, because Hope has kidnapped Everett, and Jack and Brooke and she's taken the car, and Jack and Brooke have realized that Hope has taken their kid, and now they have to find out where they're going to go.
Right.
So, overall thoughts, Jim, on Mommy's Home up until this point?
Overall thoughts? Well, I was entertained. It piqued my interest. It did get into my voyeuristic nature to a certain degree, obviously, because of the weirdness. It went a little too deep, primarily in certain areas, obviously. Just in the ones that we described is enough. Not going further on. We want to leave that alone in case anybody is really interested in reading the script.
Yeah.
I did like it because it did reach into different areas that most other writers would kind of stay away from. The majority are kind of milquetoast and rather would just do something, of the norm, so to speak, or of current day, more or less, instead of dipping into the areas that just this gentleman did here with his screenplay. Um, Definitely was entertained by it. um, but I do have a few issues with it. There are some big gaping holes, a few bits and pieces here that needed to be kind of filled in, and it does need another pass. It could definitely use another pass. I know that for sure to tighten it up some.
Okay, great. Share with us
Um,
some of the gaping holes that got on your radar and what we can learn from those.
Jack not having the friends, obviously, not interacting with any obvious buddies that he should have, and, maybe even a coworker from work that he would go out to like lunch with or something like that. A simple interaction like that would have been good.
Yeah.
Uh, More interaction with his mother-in-law and father-in-law, Margaret, and her husband would have been a little bit better. I mean, I would like to have seen some of that actually at the pool party for Everett's birthday.
Yeah.
A little bit of interaction. I mean, bring him in here as being suspicious as to Hope's actions and what's taking place at the party. There, you would figure that people would be observing this stuff and saying something about it, definitely, and be a little bit outspoken. That wasn't interacted into the script in any way whatsoever. It just kind of focused on the characters as these things were taking place. Um, it definitely needs a little bit of tightening up on the script. I mean, it did kind of dip into the girl boss situation a little bit, just a little.
Yeah.
Um,
But it was also consistent among all the other revived. Like everybody was behaving very
yeah,
violently.
yeah,
There was no real telegraphing that they're going to turn this way. And the other part too is also
exactly.
Jack was able to grab hold of her, and there was nothing she could do to get out of it. So like we do have like it is
Right.
mitigated, but I completely understand. Like yeah, if you were to turn off the movie after she starts killing a couple of the patrons in the strip club, you would absolutely say that yeah, she's a girl boss. But then once Jack grabs her, and then what follows subsequently for the rest of the third act, you realize nope, that's just more of a she got a lot of people by surprise.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Except for Brooke, obviously. Always
Yeah.
being suspicious of this woman constantly. Always keeping her eye on her to see what was going to be happening, especially her interactions with the boy, with
Hmm.
Everett. I did like there was a lot of that, and I did enjoy that because that would be real. I mean, a mother would suddenly just grift toward her kid of somebody that was acting strangely or inappropriately around the kid and maybe her husband. Oh, definitely, yeah, I'd be on her like white on rice.
Hmm.
But as far as that goes, still a pretty decent script. Yeah, I did enjoy it. I had a fun time reading it. The National Guard actually made me laugh out loud when I seen the interaction of that into the script. That definitely, I almost had a tear in my eye when I was laughing so hard when I seen that. Yeah, we can't tip into the ending, the very ending of the script either. But that's basically my opinion. I did like it. Um, Needs some work. Needs some work. It needs to fill in a few of those holes, like I said,
Hmm.
definitely for sure.
Okay, like because I'm the same opinion. I think it's actually a really well crafted story, has a very strong
Yeah.
structure, good stakes, but it is missing a little bit of that extra interaction with Mark. Like I would like to see a bit more of how damaged he is, as opposed to just kind of taking the word
Okay.
of the writer for it. Like show us a little more of how damaged he is from the absence of his mother. Um, Maybe find something. I mean, I think it would have been interesting if they took a moment where there was an argument between Brooke and her mom, and as a result,
Right.
Brooke says, "You're lucky you don't have to deal with that." And Mark would be like, "I'd give anything to deal with that. I've missed the only parent I ever knew." That would probably help.
Right.
Well, so given all of these, I mean, again, given the positives and how they kind of outweigh a little bit of the negatives, would that make you decide to greenlight this or give it a pass?
I would definitely greenlight it, but on the other end, if I were a studio executive or a production company executive, I don't think it would actually into getting passed into production, simply because of the content, um, and the fact that it dips in there rather strongly into certain territory that a majority of writers wouldn't actually try to incorporate into their screenplays nowadays, unless they're into that evocative stuff. I would pass it, yeah. I would definitely greenlight it. But as far as a studio executive, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the fence of that. Like, I think the flaws it has are not strong enough to prevent it from being greenlit. So I would greenlight this just on the concept and a lot of the execution and the dynamic. I bet you some smaller studios like A24 or Blumhouse would probably do this.
Right.
I maybe even Paramount might do this.
I would think so, yeah. Now that Paramount is a much smaller production company right now,
Yeah, like
but
they're
yeah, I would
small.
see.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, I would
smaller end
see
of the studio.
A24.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would see A24 actually do that. This would be perfect for them. And whether or not they would actually tone down the nature of the screenplay or not, I have no idea. But I'm pretty sure that A24 would take a stab at this. But
yeah,
still, I mean, and currently right now with the way money is and the way that the studios are kind of working, I would definitely greenlight it
yeah. This is a
if I
very
were an
low budget.
executive.
It's a very low budget script. It doesn't require a whole lot.
Sure.
It does have a dark ending, which I'm strongly like. Again, if you out there listening have been intrigued by our conversation on this script, I highly recommend you go check it out. Go give it a read. It is available on like a Google search, but if you're having trouble with that, just reach out to me on Twitter X. There, I'll be happy to kind of get it into your hands. Same rules apply as always. Please don't try to make the script go unnecessarily viral by spoiling it or anything. So that's because again, we're always hoping and encouraging the writers out there of the scripts that we review to get that win, get that sale, get that production going. Because
Right.
these are not your studio-driven IP assignment scripts. These are stuff from the morbid and brilliant minds of these writers putting it out there to get some attention. So with that, yeah, it's a double green light for us. Checking in over with the Patreon side of things, we have an interesting aspect. We have a 67% of the people that participated in the vote chose to greenlight Mommy's Home, with 33% passing it. I completely understand why they would want to pass it because of the borderline incestual implications that are being pushed here, even though, I mean, I will say this, it is couched quite cleverly in the fact that Hope is not 100% sure she is being honest, being told the truth, and she thinks that Jack is her son's father. And she hasn't completed that bridge into the 21st century, and accepting the fact that her son is an adult man, and she's hanging on to this part of her past that just no longer exists. So I will say that is a very clever and honest way to kind of address this very twisted aspect of it. And I think it also goes into the fact that, the writer does lean into a lot of physical similarities, how Jack is a dead ringer for his father, how Jack's son Everett is a dead ringer for Jack when he was 5, and how Jack married a woman that looks very similar to his mother. So you have all these things that kind of, orbit a theme of loss and trying to fill in a gap through familiarity as opposed to accepting what the reality actually is before you. And we over on the chat side, we have a super sticker of a poop emoji from the Dead Man for 99 cents. Thank you so much, the Dead Man, for that. Before we get going, Jim, any final thoughts, things to address that maybe we missed on this script before we call it a night?
Oh, well, a few things that I would like to have seen as well is that, well, the fact that that Hope never really had a chance to adjust, period, in the script, because she was bombarded by everything that was coming at her. Her 35-year-old son, his wife, Everett, adjusting to life in the future 35 years later. I mean, that is a big burden on somebody who just woke up, basically, and it feels just like the next day. How do you adjust to that? I mean, even discussing the nature of her in the screenplay and all of the odd things that she does and how overtly sexual she is. I mean, it's just that the fact that she never really had a chance to adjust properly, which is something that he could have actually touched on as well a little bit more, kind of gone in there a little more on a psychological level. But other than that, I did enjoy it. It's a good read. Definitely hits you funny and comes from out of nowhere quite a bit. Surprised the hell out of me, definitely.
Oh yeah, like I will say one thing I will give props to the writer for is that he took the story in a direction I was not expecting, and
Exactly.
he made it work. And it didn't feel overly convoluted except for that bath scene. But yeah, aside from that, I thought this was it's definitely the type of creepy scripts you would have gotten around the turn of the 80s, early 90s, where we had those type of like borderline blue movies, but evocative thrillers going in there. Like you had like Basic Instinct, you had Fatal Attraction, Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Those type of it has that type of element to it, and it just goes one step further and and fortunately not a step too far. So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm reminded of this,
Yeah.
like, I think there's a TV movie with Tori Spelling and Elizabeth Banks where there was a step too far in that. I can't remember the title. I just remember,
There were
like,
a
this is
few.
creepy.
Yeah, there were a few that kind of went in that direction there. They kind of definitely toned it down, but you could tell where it was going.
Yes. All right. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining me this weekend for this episode of Scripts on Saturdays. For all of those of you listening out there, next week is, of course, Easter weekend, so that will be a recorded show, but it will be playing same time, same channel. I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend and a happy Easter. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.